Chapter 2. A Duck Quacking. Before long, Granny and grandson were sitting opposite each other in deadly silence at the dining room table, just like every single Friday night. When his parents weren't watching Strictly on TV, they were eating curry or going to the movies. Friday night was their date night, and ever since Ben could remember, they had been dropping him off with his granny when they went out. If they weren't going to see Strictly stars dancing live on stage live, they would probably go to the Taj Mahal, the curry house on the high street, not the ancient white marble monument in India, and eat their body weight in poppadoms. All that could be heard in the bungalow was the ticking of the carriage clock on the mantelpiece, the clinking of metal spoons against porcelain bowls, and the occasional high-pitched whistle of Granny's faulty hearing aid. It was a device whose purpose seemed to not be so much to aid Granny's deafness, but to cause deafness in others. It was one of the main things that Ben hated about his granny, and the others were: 1. Granny would always spit in the used tissue she kept up her sleeve of her cardigan and wipe her grandson's face with it. 2. Her TV had been broken since 1992, and now it was covered in dust so thick it was like fur. 3. Her house was always stuffed full of books, and she was always trying to get Ben to read them, even though he loathed reading. Loathed is a really strong word, a synonym for hated. 4. Granny insisted you wore a heavy winter coat all year round, even on a boiling hot day, otherwise you wouldn't feel the benefits. 5. She reeked of cabbage. That means smelt. Anybody with a cabbage allergy would not be able to come within 10 miles of her. 6. Granny's idea of an exciting day out was feeding mouldy crusts of bread to some ducks in a pond. 7. She was constantly blowing off, even without acknowledging it. 8. Her blow-offs didn't just smell of cabbage, they smelled of rotten cabbage. 9. Nanny made you go to bed so early it seemed hardly worthwhile just getting up in the first place. 10. She knitted her only grandson jumpers for Christmas with puppies or kittens on them, and he was forced to wear them for the whole festive period by his parents. "How's your soup?" inquired the old lady. Ben had been stirring the pale green liquid around the chip bowl for the last 10 minutes, just hoping somehow it would disappear. It wouldn't, and now it was getting cold. Cold bits of cabbage floating round in some cold cabbagey water. It's delicious, thank you," replied Ben. "Good." Tick-tock, tick-tock. "Good," said the old lady again. Clink, clink. "Good." Granny seemed to find it as hard to speak to Ben as he did it to her. Clink, clank, whistle. "How's school?" she asked. "Boring," mumbled Ben. "Adults always ask kids how they're doing at school. The one subject kids absolutely hate talking about. You don't even want to talk about school when you're at school." "Oh," said Granny. Tick-tock, clink-clank, whistle, tick-tock. "Well, I must go and check on the oven," said Granny, after a long pause stretched into an even longer pause. "I've got your favourite cabbage pie on the go." She slowly rose from her seat and made her way to the kitchen. As she took each step, a little bubble of wind puffed out of her saggy bottom. It sounded like a duck quacking. Either she didn't realise, or she was very good at pretending she didn't realise. Ben watched her go, and then crept silently across the room. This was difficult because of all the piles of books everywhere. Ben's granny loved books, and she always seemed to have her nose in one. They were stacked on shelves, lined on windowsills, piled up in corners. Crime novels were her favourite, books about gangsters, bank robbers, the mafia, and the like. Ben wasn't sure what the difference was between a gangster and a gangster, but a gangster, spelt with a T-A at the end, seemed so much worse. Although Ben hated reading, he loved looking at all the covers of Granny's books. They had fast cars and guns and glamorous ladies painted on them, and Ben found it hard to believe that this boring old granny of his liked reading stories that were so thrilling. "Why is she obsessed with gangsters?" thought Ben. "Gangsters don't live in bungalows. Gangsters don't play Scrabble. Gangsters probably don't smell of cabbage. Ben was a very slow reader, and the teachers at school made him feel stupid because he couldn't keep up. The headmistress had even put him down a year in the hope that he would catch up with his reading. As a result, all of his friends were in a different class, and he felt nearly as lonely at school as he did at home, with parents that only cared about ballroom dancing. Eventually, after a hairy moment where he nearly knocked over a stack of real-life crime books, Ben made it to the pot plant in the corner. He quickly tipped the remainder of his soup into it. The plant looked as if it was already dying, and if it wasn't dead yet, Granny's cold cabbage soup would surely kill it off. Suddenly, Ben heard Granny's bum squeaking again as it made its way into the dining room, so he sped back to the table. He sat there trying to look as innocent as possible, with his empty bowl in front of him and his spoon in his hand. "I finished my soup. Thank you, Granny. It was yummy." "That's good," said the old lady as she trundled back to the table, carrying a saucepan on a tray. "I've got plenty more for you here, boy." Smiling, she served him up another bowl. Ben gulped in terror. So that's the end of chapter 2. I hope you enjoyed it. We got to learn more about our characters then, didn't we? Can you think of 3 adjectives to describe Ben and 3 adjectives to describe Granny? Who's your favourite character so far? Our next chapter is called Plumbing Weekly. I'll speak to you soon and read the next chapter then.